So when Sony announced this lens, this is the 28 to 60 millimeter f4 to f5.6 kit lens. I just wasn't impressed at all. I mean, you know, we're cutting off the 24 millimeter, we're cutting off the 70, 75, or 85 long end of it, and then we're giving it an f4 to f5.6, and then you gotta click this out just to use it. I was like, I don't know about that. I'm just completely not even interested at all. But then I started using this little bad boy. Hey everybody, Aaron Jamerson here for yet another exciting, absolutely exciting video here on my YouTube channel. We're talking about the kit lens. This little sucker really surprised me, and we're going to go to that in a minute. But before we do, I will be comparing it with the Tamron 28 to 75 millimeter f2.8. And just so you know, this is not a race. This is not a competition to see what lens is better, because in, well, most cases when you have different lenses like this, you're going to use them for different reasons. But since I've used this for 3 years now, I just wanted to see what will this kit lens, because I wasn't using it at first, but then I took it out with me in New York and I was shocked. So we're just going to compare just to see the, you know, overall essence that they each give, to see if this could replace this, or could I use this in certain circumstances where I used to use this but maybe not anymore. So let's get into that. So the Tamron lens, if you haven't followed my YouTube channel for a while, this is the main reason why I got the Sony, changed from my Panasonic to the Sony full frame system, is this lens, because it's not that large, it's not that heavy, it's a great price point. It's 28 to 75 is like right in the area where I work the most. Constant f2.8, amazing. I've used this for weddings, I used it for shooting models, magazine shoots, I did it for lots of travel, street photography. I mean, you name it, I use this lens. And so far nothing, you know, so far everything I use, I keep coming back to this lens. So let's look at this other lens here, the kit lens, and see how it compares. So as we all know, it's not 24 millimeters, it's 28 millimeters. After having the Tamron for 3 years, I've really learned and adapted to using 28 millimeters. So for me, not having 24 on this isn't a big deal for me. 28 is just fine. So it's okay for me. I've did it for 3 years on this. I can do it for years more on this if I decide to keep using it, as you'll find out at the end of the video. And as far as 60 millimeters is concerned, how I'm typically using zoom lenses, because I love shooting primes, is no matter what zoom lens I have, even if it's the 24 to 108 Sony lens or whatever it is, I'm almost always at the longer end of that, because I love compression with longer lenses. And if I can't get back far enough, I'm shooting at the widest end of a zoom lens, which in this case is 28. So I don't go too far from those. It's either at 70, well, on this, it's either at 60 or 28, or on this, it's either at 75 or 28. But I do, of course, find myself being all the way zoomed tight at 60 or 75 and can't get everything I want, and I can't get back far enough, and then I zoom out a little bit to get what I want. So that's how I typically use these. So I'm really interested in, you know, the 28, the wide end, and the long end of these. However, with the 50 mil, I could use that for a good majority of everything. So I do kind of find myself landing around that 50 millimeter, just being out, and that's what I end up shooting with. It's not like I'm going, let's go with a 50. It's just I'm either long, I can't get back far enough, and when I zoom out to get that wider shot, I find myself at 50 a lot. And if I want that real, of course, the wide shot and my low type shots, I'm at 24. So just keep in mind, that's how I kind of use a zoom lens. One thing I'll have you know, if you haven't seen my other comparisons with this Tamron 28 to 75 f2.8, I actually put this up against the Sony Zeiss 55 millimeter f2.8. And for many years, that's been one of the sharpest lenses you can get. Now it's been trumped by many lenses, but that doesn't mean it's still not a sharp lens. And this Tamron at 50 millimeters, compare that to the Sony Zeiss 55 millimeters. I have a video of it. I mean, the center sharpness is so close, I could hardly tell the difference. Of course, corner sharpness on this fades out pretty quick, whereas the Zeiss doesn't. But that just to let you know the standard that I'm comparing with this, with the kit lens, is that the center sharpness on this is quite sharp, at least on my copy, so keep that in mind. The Tamron, lens to me it's not a lens that I get just because it's inexpensive or it's convenient because it's a zoom. I actually really like the rendering of this lens, even with its softish corners and its little bit of vignette and stuff. I just love the color and everything how it produces. Now, of course, zoomed out at 75 millimeter at f2.8, it's plenty blurry enough for most of what I do. A very, very few shots do I wish I had a little more blur in the background, maybe because there's trees or something back there that looks just a little jagged where maybe an f1.8 lens would have done a little better, but it's very rare. So for me, this is pretty good lens at f2.8 and the little flaws that it has. So keep that in mind as well when we do this little comparison, that I love the rendering of the Tamron. Now, since putting the kit lens on the camera, on the Sony a7C, and I started using it, I really started liking it so much so that, I don't know, for maybe a month or two, I've only used the Tamron now for only 2 shoots. And that's pretty amazing. And I just wanted to shoot with this lens. So that's quite amazing. It impressed me enough that all the lenses I've tried in the last 3 years couldn't dethrone this. Of course, I would try them out, but I always went back to this. That might be the case with this one as well, but first impressions, I've only used that one in like maybe 2 months or so, just twice. So that says a lot for this little lens here. So before we go any further, I do want to stress that this lens is inferior to the Tamron in almost every way, as we'll find out. I'll give you the reason why I'm still using this a lot more than the Tamron, but just so you know, that is inferior to this. So I don't want anybody saying like, oh, the Tamron is way better. It's better. Let's find out and check some things out. As my other videos, I got my very expensive test charts to test these out. Let's look at those right now and see how inferior this little bad boy is. Okay, so here's the very expensive test charts that I put up on the wall. Not really, but I find that when you find the same magazine with the same text, it actually works pretty good. So we're looking right here. You're going to see what we're working on here. This is the kit at 28 millimeters at f5.6. Let's go f4, sorry. We're going to look at the f4 first, and what you're going to notice is if I click on the Tamron at f2.8 here, let me unlock all these first. You're going to see a yellow line here. Hopefully you guys can see that. So the Tamron will always be on the right and the kit lens will always be on the left. And basically I'm just going to reveal the Tamron when we're ready to go. So right down here you can see I'm at 100%, and here's the yellow line if you can't see it. So here is the kit lens at 28 millimeters at f4, and when I click the little I button here, we're going to see the Tamron show up over here on the right. So let's click on that. So here we are now looking at the Tamron, and if you can see it going in and out, that's the Tamron right here. And if we look at it at 100%, they look really darn close. And this, remember, the Tamron's at 2.8 and the kit lens is at f4. So that's pretty good for the Tamron. So it's a tie. To be honest with you, it's a tie when we're looking at both of these at f2.8 and the Tamron at f2.8. Now, if we go up into the corners, come up here, we're going to see that the Tamron is, I'm going to move the Tamron now. So we're going to move the Tamron down. So Tamron's on the bottom. And you can see right away that the kit lens definitely doesn't have as much vignetting as the Tamron does at f2.8. And as far as the sharpness, it's pretty close to a tie. I'm looking this after and after. I don't see much of a difference in sharpness. So far, they're looking pretty good. But again, that's at 2.8. So let's go back to the center, and now we're going to look at the Tamron at f4. So if we go into 100%, this is the kit lens all the way across. Let's turn on the f4. And here is f4. Come down here. So 100%. Again, they look actually pretty darn close. The Tamron, I would say, sharpened up a tad, but if I go into 200%, they still look pretty similar to me. To be honest with you, the center sharpness still seems to be the same. If we come up over here into the corners and we are at 100%, This is the Tamron. We're going to move the Tamron down. And we could see again that the vignette, they're starting to get closer matched. But as far as sharpness is concerned, I would say that it's hard to tell, but I would say the Tamron's a little softer in the corner when they're both at f4, and that's just the nature of lenses. They get weird like that, but when I look around, it's close. They kind of look the same and they kind of don't, but when we look at this, it's clearly the Tamron's softer in the corners when they're both at f4. So let's go on to f5.6. Now we're going to look at f5.6. This is going to be the Tamron over here, and let's turn it on. Oh, well, let's go to f5.6 on the kit lens. So here's the kit lens at f5.6, and you can see it's pretty darn sharp. At f5.6, that looks great. And the Tamron at f5.6, we're going to turn it on, and here's the Tamron. So if we look at the Tamron, I would say that, again, it's really close. If I had to guess, I would say the Tamron's a tad sharper, but when we're at 100% and 200%, and you just got to kind of guess at it and say, I guess this is sharper, then to me it's pretty much a draw because I can hardly tell. The Tamron, again, is pretty vignette-y. If we move the Tamron down, they both look, you know, the Tamron still has more vignetting here. If we look at the sharpness in the corners, both at f5.6, again, they're really close. I mean, it's just hard to tell because sometimes it looks a little better here on the Tamron, but then sometimes it looks a little better here. So I would say maybe, I can't tell. Okay, so there you go. So at f2.8, I really can't tell a difference. I think it's pretty much of a wash. So let's go on over to 51 millimeters, because at 51 millimeters, I did notice that the Tamron is as sharp as the Sony Zeiss, or pretty darn close to where you can't even tell. So this should be a good test. Here we are looking at the kit lens, 50 millimeter at f5.6, because that's wide open for that lens. And first we're going to look at the Tamron. Now it was at 51 millimeters because it's just a millimeter off, but we're going to look right over here to the right to see how it looks at f2.8. So at f2.8, we can see that the Tamron is just ever so slightly softer, but that again is wide open, which is pretty impressive opposed to the wide open f5.6. And it looks, I would say maybe it's just a little less contrast than the kit lens. It's pretty close. If we go to 200, I would say the kit lens does beat it in the center here. If we go up to the corners and we bring the Tamron down, I would say the kit lens is definitely sharper. So the kit lens wide open at f5.6 completely beats the Tamron in the corner. In the middle, it beats it a little bit. So far, the kit lens is winning at 50 millimeters, which says a lot. But let's go to f5.6 as well on the Tamron. So let's go to 100%. And if we go in the middle here, we can turn on the Tamron. Here's the Tamron. Now I would say that it's a lot closer, but I would say the Tamron is ever so slightly sharper. This says a lot for the kit lens because the Tamron at f5.6 is really comparable to the Zeiss with the test that I've done. And if we go to 200, I mean, it's really close. Again, pixel peeping at this level, and I have to guess, I would say the Tamron, but it's really close. If we come up here and we go to 100%, and if we move the Tamron down and we look at the corner sharpness, I would say the kit lens might beat it a little, but again, it's really hard to tell. It's hard to tell. So, you know, I mean, it's almost a wash at 50 millimeters when they're both at f5.6. Of course, when the Tamron's at f2.8, the kit lens wins, but that would be a little bit unfair. But it's really close at f5.6. Let's move on to the long end. So here we are at the long end, and of course some people say it's not fair. You need to do the Tamron at 60 millimeters. I don't care about, you know, that. I just want to see, you know, because I use the Tamron at 75 millimeters a lot, so I want to see where it's at when I'm shooting photos. So when I'm shooting at the long end, I'm 60 millimeters on the kit, and I'm 75 on the Tamron. So let's see what it looks like opposed to the kit lens. Now the kit lens is at f5.6. and what we're looking at here. And if we turn on the 2.8 Tamron, we can see that that's pretty impressive, because the Tamron, although it's a tad softer, it's really close. Pixel peeping like this, you know, as we come down here, it looks really soft. But I mean, on the Tamron, dead center looks pretty darn good. If we move to the corners here at 100% and we move the Tamron down, the kit lens is beating the Tamron. It just is much more crisp. Again, that's at f5.6. So let's look at the Tamron at f5.6 to make things even more fair. Let's turn on the Tamron. And at f5.6, the Tamron is really sharp. Now it's noticeably sharper. Of course, I'm at 75 millimeters, so I'm zoomed in more than the 60 millimeters. So it's going to appear a little bit sharper because it's closer. But I would say that it's pretty darn, if I look at the same, it's just more contrastier on the Tamron. So I would say the Tamron wins zoomed all the way in on both of these lenses, both at f5.6. It's close, but I think we just have to give it to the Tamron. If we look at the watch, I don't know what that's going to look like. I would say the Tamron definitely beats it, even though it's a little more zoomed in. And if we look at the corners, whoops, let's bring down the corner here. We're at 100%. And they both look pretty darn good. I would say the kit lens, I would believe the kit lens beats it a little bit in the corners. So the corner sharpness retains more on the at 60 millimeters at f5.6. That's what we're looking at over here. And here's the Tamron. It's close, but yeah, the kit wins on that one. So far you can see that they're pretty on par with each other. I would say, you know, at 60 millimeters and at 75 millimeters, the Tamron at f5.6 and f5.6 are pretty close. At f2.8, they're probably even closer with each other, but you're getting f2.8 opposed to f5.6. But it's kind of like a wish-wash, because sometimes one's a little better the other time. So it's really close, and this is pixel peeping. So far, I would, I mean, as far as just sharpness, and not the fact that this can go 2.8, just as far as sharpness is concerned at f5.6, both of them, it's pretty darn close. I mean, I could shoot either one, and I don't think anybody would ever know on any photos of which one you took. I mean, if you took them both at 50 millimeters and you showed two people, I mean, they'd be like, I don't know. So far, this kit lens is keeping up with my trusty old Tamron, and I have no doubts or no regrets using that on the photography that I've done so far. I don't feel like I'm cheating myself. So the other thing about lenses is like chromatic aberration or purple fringing around edges when there's a contrast in the scene. I just wanted to see. For me, it's not a huge deal, because when I was just in the real world shooting with either one of these, I've never seen it. I've tested it before, and it's almost non-existent on this, and I never seen it in this, even though I didn't do an absolute test. But I went outside real quick and just shot some trees just to see. So let's go check those out. I haven't looked at these yet, and see what we find. Okay, so here we are, just shooting into the sun with trees. I don't even know if this is the best test anyways, but this is the f2.8 at f4, and I mean, there's not much to write home about. 200, I mean, there's just nothing here, So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. Let me go to the next one. This is at f5.6. See, I'm zoomed out here, and if we just zoom in, there's just really nothing to write home about. Again, I don't know if this is the best test. I mean, the sun is out. This is, there might be a hint of purple somewhere in here, but barely noticeable at 200%. And if we go to the Tamron at f2.8, since we're talking about the Tamron, there's nothing. There's a little bit of purple at the most extreme point of this photo. Nothing to write home about. And the Tamron at f5.6, there's just nothing here. And let's go down to 75 millimeters. This is at 75 millimeters at f2.8. Nothing is here. Where's the bright sun at? It's over here now. Nothing really there. And then 75 at f5.6. So I just went out and did these, and that's with all the tests with these. There's almost no chromatic aberration. So what about bokeh? Because everybody wants to know how that background blur looks, right? And to be honest, I'm not someone who really cares about the the quality of background bokeh or whatever you want to call it. I do like the rounder balls and I do football shaped balls, but in reality, I don't care. I mean, if someone would have told me 15 years ago and said, hey Aaron, I have a prophecy that in the future, photographers are going to blur the background out like crazy to separate their subject from their background, I'd be like, yeah, I mean, that's okay, right? He said, yeah, but the thing is, what they're going to do is they're going to zoom past, in post, they're going to zoom past the very thing that they're trying to separate from the background that's in focus, and they're going to zoom past that and then complain about and argue about what the background blur looks like. I mean, if someone told me that 15 years ago, I'd be like, what? Why would they care what the blurry blob looks like in the background? But that's the day of age we live in. People care about what the very essence of separating the subject that they want your eye to go to, but then they're going to look at the background blur, which is not supposed to be that important. But I do know that people are like, oh, it's busy background, it makes my eyes look over there. I'm not one of those. When I see a beautiful photo, whether there's background blur or not, or good bokeh or bad bokeh, that photo is so amazing. I'm looking at what the photographer created for me, for my eyes to look at. You know, it's like, oh, look, that is pretty. So for me, it doesn't matter. So, but you know, I took like 3 shots just to see what it looks like because I know people care. So let's go in there and see what the bokeh or out of focus background or highlights look like. Let's check it out. Let's look at this right here. This is the kit lens at 60 millimeters zoomed all the way in, because if you know, zooming in, you're going to get compression. The bokeh balls can get bigger, and your background can have a perceived more blurry to the background. So, like again, these aren't the best photos, but I just did it because people might want to know. And this is at wide open at f4-5.6, and this is at 25%, and this is at 50%, and here's 100%. And we can see this is what the bokeh looks like, or the bokeh balls, or out of focus, whatever you want to call them. So, yep, I mean, we do got onion ringing in these, slight, maybe not really, maybe a little bit, but that's what they look like, guys. There you have it. Okay, so let's look over at the 75 millimeter at f4-5.6 just to see what it looks like. And this is the Tamron at f4-5.6. So you could see that I guess they're rounder. You know, they're rounder. Because it's at 75 millimeters, they're going to be bigger because of compression. It's bringing that background in bigger and closer. If I had to choose which one looked better, yeah, I would say the Tamron, but that wouldn't stop me from getting a lens. But there you have it. And if we look at now if we go to f2.8, oh, look at that. Now it's just pure beauty. So yeah, I mean, I would admit, you know, the bokeh balls look better, but that doesn't stop me from buying a lens. You know, it's fine. But if I was to take this shot and the client said we want the best looking bokeh, well then out of these 2 lenses, I would absolutely choose the 75 millimeter. But it doesn't stop me from buying a lens. So if we look at this is like a little underexposed here as well, but if we look at the difference, so this is the Tamron at f2.8, and this is the kit lens wide open. You can see, you know, there's the bird, they're about the same size, so everything's about equal here, except you can see, I mean, this is way better if you're trying to get that bokeh. So for me, I would definitely use the Tamron if I'm doing a shot like this where there is bokeh in the background. And if we just compare that with f4-5.6 Tamron, so here we've got the Tamron over here. So when they're both at f4-5.6, we could see this has a little more, you know, the Tamron's a little rounder. Of course, they're bigger because of the 75 millimeter compression over this one. If we, let's scale this one up a little bit just to see them at roughly kind of the same. You could see that, yeah, the Tamron definitely has nicer, pleasing bokeh balls. So as you can see, if I have these 2 lenses, you know, that I own these and they're in my bag, and there's a shot like this where those bokeh balls really play into the photograph like this, like it's a bird, it's not that interesting, but the bokeh is going to make this shot interesting, absolutely use this. So when I say I don't care about bokeh, I think I'm more rather say I care more about the quantity of bokeh, not necessarily the quality, if that makes any sense. Meaning, if I know it's a bokeh shot, I'm going to get my longest, fastest lens maybe to to really highlight that. So I'm not poo-pooing bokeh. I do like it, but I don't necessarily buy a lens based off of the quality of the bokeh. Definitely I don't look at typical photography and then judge it based off of its bokeh. Maybe that's more what I'm getting at. So let's look at the close focus distance, because that's a huge plus on the Tamron. Close focus distance, let's see how much closer the Tamron can get over the kit lens. So here we are, just did a quick test with my boy Luke here. On the left we got the Sony kit lens zoomed all the way in, and we've got the Tamron zoomed all the way in. And I put these on a tripod and I just kept edging the tripod closer in manual focus till I got focus. So you could see that, you know, this isn't bad, the kit lens. You know, this is a 6-inch figure, and I can almost fill the whole frame up with a 6-inch figure. So, you know, if you're shooting, you know, objects that are 6 inches, it's not bad. I mean, you still have 24 megapixels where you could still crop in and get amazing looking shots, actually. But, you know, the Tamron's definitely going to beat it at 75 millimeter, where, you know, you're going to save those megapixels by not having to crop in to get closer. But, you know, it's there. Tamron beats it for sure, and the Tamron's really sharp, by the way. If we go to 100% here, where did it focus on anyways? Focus like right here. The depth of field is very thin, like somewhere right around in here. You can see that's pretty sharp. I mean, it's really darn sharp, even close up. And so is the kit lens. Even at its closest focus distance, I mean, this is pretty darn sharp. I mean, there's nothing to complain about that sharpness. I mean, that's like really sharp, to be honest with you. So yeah, Tamron wins, but there's plenty of room. Now, if we just, I didn't do this before, let's just scale this up. If we scale this up as if, let's say we were cropping, let's say we wanted to crop this, well, I don't know now, but let's say we just wanted to crop that closer. We could see if we go into 100%, that it's pretty sharp. So you could still crop in and get what you need, but anyways, Tamron wins. So let's now look at both of these at the wide end. Okay, so here they are at 28 millimeters. Again, the kit lens is over here and the Tamron's over here. And you can see now this is a huge difference when you're at 28 millimeters on both of these lenses, because that is remarkable, where we can't quite even come close to filling the frame on the kit lens, but on the Tamron we definitely filled the frame up with this. So it's quite amazing, and it looks a little soft when we're this close. You know, it's kind of hard. I used manual focus when I did this, but I think that's about the sharpness you're going to get anyways on that. And this one here, if we just really, I mean, we're at 200%. This looks sharper, but we're not. I mean, that's just like, look at that. So, you know, Tamron wins hands down. So you can see, as far as just performance is concerned, about sharpness and all that stuff, they're pretty comparable. But I mean, let's face it, the Tamron can get much closer. At 28 millimeters, you can do those cool, like I love to be in a fancy coffee shop somewhere, who knows where you are, in Europe or something. You got this really cool looking coffee that you could fill the frame up with that at 28 millimeters and still have a wide field of view in the back to see the coffee shop. So yeah, this hands down beats that one in close focus. As far as sharpness, they're pretty comparable. I don't think you're going to notice a difference. Nobody's going to notice a difference. Let me face it. Nobody will notice a difference if you took a photo side by side and printed them out or put them on the screen, unless you're pixel peeping and saying, well, I think that one's sharper. So I think they're pretty on par with each other as far as sharpness. Of course, f2.8, hello, we're going to go into that a little later. So yeah, pretty comparable in test results. So you're probably wondering, okay, so if the Tamron is as good as or better in many situations as this kit lens, I'm going to give you 6 reasons why I like using the kit lens over the Tamron. So let's get started. So the first one, number one, it's naturally the size. This kit lens is so small, so lightweight, it's very easy to put in a bag and take out of a bag. And when I first seen this, poo-poo this idea here, I think it's great. I wish all lenses could shrink while you're not using it in your bag. And when you're ready, you just pull it out like this, and now I can walk around like this. I don't have to close it every time I'm not using the camera, only when I'm stowing it away. And even with it out, it still fits in my bag anyways. But I think that's very genius to have lenses do that. Can you imagine if you could maybe half size this if it's possible, and you click it out when you want to use it. It'd be kind of neat for, travel and all that stuff. So small, lightweight, and easy to maneuver in a bag. So number two isn't necessarily why I'm using this over the Tamron, but why I'm using this in general is 28 to 60 millimeters is right in my focal range of most used prime lenses or whatever. I mean, anywhere from 24 to 90 is what I've used for most of my photography career. So having it being 28 and 60 is kind of right in there. Of course, I like longer lenses for that compression, but this is it's right in there. So I would keep that as why I use this a lot, is because it's right in the most used focal range for me. So this kind of goes in along with the size. I put it at number 3, but it's because it's discreet. I mean, when you have this on, you're not attracting thieves. You don't look like you have a expensive camera. You're not attracting the cops and security guards or wherever you're at, because when even though this isn't a big lens, it's bigger than most point and shoots. It's bigger than a cell phone naturally, so is this, but you get what I'm saying. When you have this on, people on the street don't think, ooh, look, that guy's zooming in on me, and all those things. It's like you're being the gray man, you're just another tourist out there with a point and shoot camera, taking photos, and I like it for that reason. The f-stop, I'm typically at zoomed in, so I'm at f5.6 most of the time. Is that why I use this lens? Well, it's not why I'm using the lens, because I can stop down almost every lens at f5.6. But at f5.6, it doesn't bother me, especially when I'm doing street photography. I know there's people out there that like that, 85 millimeter f1.4 or f1.8. They're getting those blurred. It's a really cool style. But for me, I prefer to have more in focus when I'm doing street photography, because I want your eye to look around and see, what's his subject? Well, clearly that might be his subject, but oh wow, look at that. I like to see that. I don't want to blur the background. Usually it's like, especially if I'm in New York and I'm taking a photograph, I want detail, I want everything in focus, or not everything, but at whatever f5.6 will get you. Now I do stop down even further. But I use f5.6 a lot when I'm shooting models as well. When we're doing like designer clothing, I need, I'm sure they want all their fabrics in focus. I mean, they've told me that before. They don't want to have a shallow depth of field where just the eyelashes are in focus and everything is blurry. So I'm used to shooting f5.6. A lot of not a lot of wedding photographers, but there are some wedding photographers that shoot at f5.6 and greater to get, same reason, to get everything in focus. So f5.6 to me is great for street photography. Landscapes, city nightscapes, I'm all stopping down anyways. So f5.6 for that type of photography isn't a big issue for me, and some model type shoots depending on where they are. If maybe photos like this where I'm photographing a model, in this case it's my wife, and we've got New York in the background, so I don't care to blur it out. I want to see it. So f5.6 isn't an issue, but that's one reason why I do have this on here, is because when I want f5.6 and I have a small lens, I'm doing street type stuff, and so it's pretty good. So I said 6 reasons why I want to use this over the Tamron. Well, maybe that's not the right way to put it, but this is a weather sealed lens, as is the Tamron. But knowing that this is weather sealed and the camera's weather sealed, and I know people on YouTube say no camera's weather sealed, but there are gaskets all throughout this thing. So I would rather have a camera and lens knowing that there's gaskets throughout than having a camera that's not and needing to use it when you're traveling and you're out and it starts raining. You're not going to damage the camera, or at least it's a little bit of a safeguard. So that's really cool about the lens. I don't know how weather sealed it is, but maybe I'll show a diagram of the O-rings or the rubber seal gaskets or whatever. So that's another plus on having this when I'm traveling around the streets. So I wasn't keeping track. Is this number 6? So number 6 is like the biggest reason why I've been using this over the Tamron. Not because it has better corner sharpness or center sharpness or whatever. It's mainly because it's one of the funnest lenses I've ever shot with. It is so fun. I just never knew I would have that much fun with it. Shooting with the Tamron, although we don't consider this big, but compared to this, it's big. I mean, hello, it's much bigger, right? And having that Tamron on there, it's a lens. It works great. I love it. But this thing right here reminds me of when I'm shooting on a small Sony 55 millimeter or a Sony 50 millimeter or the small Samyang lenses. any small prime. It feels like that, and that's why I loved primes a lot, not just because you can blur the background and they're typically sharper and all that, but mainly because of their size. And this thing gives me that feeling of a prime, and that's why I like shooting with small primes. But the cool thing is you can zoom on it, so you don't have to switch out lenses throughout the day. I went to Europe with just a 55mm Zeiss and a 24mm Samyang lens, just those two. And although it was great because 50mm can give me most of what I want, there's always throughout the day sometime I'm switching it out. And with this lens, for that type of photography, I don't have to switch lenses. So it could be raining out, it could be windy out, and I'm not like trying to, protect the sensor from getting dirty. It's fun to use. It's quick, and I can get so many photos, which I probably showed in this review here, that it's just fun. I was shocked that I had that much fun with this, because any zoom lens I had, I never had a small zoom lens. This was probably the smallest zoom lens I ever had, and I didn't have that fun feeling about it. It works great, and I love it. But this gave me that fun factor on this camera too. I mean, the Sony A7C, just fun. That's #1 on the list, but I put it for #6 just to let you guys know that this little bad boy is a charm to use. So the big question is, am I going to replace the Tamron for this lens? I like to use it more than the Tamron because it's fun and small, and you don't look, like a professional out there when you want to be discreet. The answer is no. I'm definitely not going to trade in or trade the kit lens for the Tamron. They do use different purposes. If I'm out, I'm always going to take these together. Someone asked me, like, why do you take both if they have kind of the similar focal range? It's because if I'm just out shooting street photography, even though I told you I could use it for professional shoots, I use this for professional shoots. They're about the same sharpness as I showed you in this video, and I shoot a lot at f5.6 on this when I'm shooting professional type stuff. But the main reason is this is going to allow you to have so much more freedom over artistic type of shots you can get. For one, 75mm gives you more compression. 28mm you can get closer and get those shots as I showed you that this can. We're at f2.8, so if I find myself in low light situations, we can use this. So, and it's weather sealed as well. So it's not going to replace it, but anytime I do, like, let's say a professional photo shoot, I'll definitely keep this on because I have that ability to blur the background if it seems a little busy or I just don't want to see the background. I can blur it. This, it's a little harder. So any professional shoots, this is going on for that purpose. But when it comes to travel, I'll still take these because I photograph my wife all the time when we're out, like, what do you call it? Professional type shots, with her clothing and all that stuff. So I probably use that, but I wouldn't hesitate to use this in a professional shoot. However, that's where I'm going with that. But when I'm just out shooting stuff and it's daylight, this is just the way to go for me. So yeah, definitely not going to replace that. So now, do I recommend you getting this lens? Because you can get it with the camera itself. I would say, get this lens if you do a lot of street photography and you're not crazy about just blurring the background. And if you're running around town like I showed you in this video, I mean, we're in New York, we're just running around taking shots, and you want to have small, lightweight, you don't want to be noticed, you want to put it in the smallest bag, like, well, you guys probably seen my Peak Design 5-liter sling that I use. This lens is for you because it's just perfect. I mean, you're going to get amazing shots from it. It's sharp, it's corner to corner sharpness is, well, a little better sometimes than this, sometimes not, or they're the same, whatever. But anyways, definitely get it if you do that. However, I don't know if I would get it with the camera because there's a lot of people out there that don't like this lens for whatever reasons, probably because they want low light and blurry backgrounds and all that stuff. But a lot of people are selling these, and you could probably buy the body alone and buy this off of eBay or something for a really cheap price. So for me, I wouldn't suggest just having one lens. I would get this. I would get the body only and get a prime lens, a fast prime lens, whether that be, I don't know what you shoot or what you like, but any fast prime lens, f1.8 or faster. And if you want to keep it small, you can get the Sony 50mm. That's what I have. Inexpensive lens. I did a review on it. It's an amazing lens. A lot of people poo-poo it, but check out my video. I kind of prove it wrong for me that I love the lens. But get a prime f1.8 lens with the body, and then pick this up for cheap on eBay or something, or from a friend that just doesn't like it and selling it. That way, you can run around with this lens all day long, and if you find yourself in a low light situation, or I would like to blur the background on this, then you can just pull that 50mm or the 35 or whatever, f1.8 or whatever it is, slap that on there. So now you got low light and you've got blurry backgrounds, but then you've got also a walk around lens that does everything. That's probably how I would go if you're into that type of thing. If you're a professional, you don't need any advice from me, that's for sure. For me, right now I'll probably do another video about the lenses that I'm typically sticking with. Right now I'm kind of up in the air about what I'm going to always take with me. But for now, it's the kit lens for obvious reasons, the Tamron for professional type photo shoots, and then the one I'm filming on, which is the inexpensive 50mm f1.8. I could, really, I don't think I would take both of these in my bag per se. I would have one or the other with me, but the 50mm f1.8 is always with me in my bag, regardless of what one of these I'm using. So if I'm running around with this on the town, I've got my 51.8 in the bag, and if I'm running around with Tamron on my camera, I've got the 51.8 in the bag for the reasons I just spoke of. So that's about it, guys. If you have any questions, leave some comments, and I will talk to you next time. Bye-bye.